Today we'll be looking at the Python implementation of one of the time series forecasting techniques that we saw last week. If you remember, we discussed a list of methods or list of techniques for time series forecasting, starting with the naive method, simple average method, moving average method, and then we had exponential smoothing methods such as the simple exponential smoothing, Hall's linear trend, Holt-Winter method, ARIMA, and a couple of multivariate techniques as well. Now today we will be looking into how to implement this Holt-Winter method using a very small or sample dataset in Python. Okay. So just to give you an overview of the method again, this Holt-Winter method is one of the exponential smoothing methods. Now this is what we call as the triple exponential smoothing. Now what do I mean by that? If you see, there is something called as simple exponential smoothing, right? This has only one parameter, what we call as alpha, which is defined as the smoothing parameter, and it is the rate at which the weights decrease. So these weights decrease exponentially, and the rate at which the weights decrease is given by the smoothing parameter called alpha. And the way this works is it gives a higher weightage to the more recent observations and lower weightage to the older observations. So this is the simple exponential smoothing. Then we have a technique called as the Holt's linear trend, which is a form of double exponential smoothing. What is the meaning again? So here, this is a slightly more advanced version of the simple exponential smoothing. It allows us to specify two parameters. So one is what we call as a damping factor, and then the other is it allows us to model the trend component. So if you remember, I told you, when you have time series data, you can split it into different components like trend, seasonality, level, and noise, right? And some of the techniques, for example, the ARIMA technique that we have here, you can use that technique only if your data is stationary. Okay, and by stationary, what we mean is that trend and seasonality components should not be there. Yeah, so data should have constant mean and variance. You should remove the trend and seasonality and so on, right? So this particular technique, the double exponential smoothing technique called as the Holt's linear trend, you can use it even if your data has a trend. So this has two components. So one is the damping factor and the trend component. So that is why this is called as the double exponential smoothing. Now what we will be looking at today is this particular method, Holt-Winter method. This is what we call as the triple exponential smoothing, because here we can account for both trend as well as seasonality, and apart from these two parameters, you can specify the number of the frequency at which the season repeats. So does the season repeat once in a year? Does the season repeat every week? Does the season repeat every month? So there is one component that you can use to specify the frequency of repetition of the seasonal component. So that is one component, and then you have the trend component as well as the seasonal component. So for both trend and seasonality, you can specify whether it is an additive or multiplicative component. So that is why this method is called as triple exponential smoothing method. Okay. So this is just to give you an overview of the different exponential smoothing methods and how they differ from one another. Any questions here on the theory part until now? Okay, so let me just show you what the code looks like. So you are a little bit familiar with the Python programming, right? I think Akhil has covered a few sessions in Python. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So before we go line by line into it, I'll just give you an overview of the different sections of the code. First part is where we load different libraries, and then we load the dataset that we'll be working with, and then we split that dataset into training and testing. Okay, and then we aggregate the dataset at a daily level. Okay, so by aggregation at a daily level, what I mean is the dataset that we have with us is something like a metro rail ridership data. So, okay, so that data is basically at an hourly level. So I'll just show you what that data looks like. So ID is nothing but the row ID, and then you have the date time, where for each hour on each day, how many people took the metro in that particular city. That is the data that we have. So starting from 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and so on. And we have data for around 1 year, starting from 25th of August 2012 to okay, so we have almost for 2 years. We have it from August 2012 to 25th September 2014. Okay, so we have almost 2 years data. Now I did say that last week, to make any decent time series forecast, we need a minimum of 3 years of data. But of course, finding that data was a bit difficult for me. So just to show you how to work with time series data, I have taken this particular example for today. Okay, so this is what the data set that we'll be dealing with today. And yeah, so we load this data set. We split this data set into two parts: training and testing data. And for those of you who are not familiar, the purpose why we do this train test split is to avoid any kind of an overfitting in the model. Okay, so the moment you get any data, the moment you start training any model, right? So before that, what you have to do is you usually have a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split of the data, like 80% training data, 20% testing data. So you build the model on the training data set, and you fit or apply that model on the testing data set and see what the accuracy looks like. Okay. The reason for doing that is in case you don't make the split of training and testing, and there is a possibility for you to overfit the model. So you might fine tune the parameters of the model so many times such that on the training data it will give you a 90% accuracy. But tomorrow, when you have to forecast on some test data or some if you have to do some kind of a what if analysis, you apply the same model, you will get a very, very low accuracy. So that is why the model has to be generic in nature and not suited only to that particular data set on which you have trained the model. For that purpose, we split the data set into training and testing sets. And then the way we saw the data here, it is at an hourly level, right? 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and so on. Now, this is a very granular level of the data. And let's say it is not necessary for us to forecast the metro ridership at an hourly level. Let's say I just need to plan my capacities, and it is sufficient if I make my forecast at a daily level, right? So for that purpose, we aggregate the hourly data, or we roll up the hourly data into a daily data. Okay, and then some basic descriptives. We plot the time series of the train and test data. We look at what are the different components of the time series, that trend component, seasonal component, and so on. And then we build the whole to winter exponential smoothing model, and then we visualize the results, and finally we measure the accuracy of the model. Okay, so this is the code that we have. Now I'll just take you through each line of the code, and I will explain what it means. Any questions here until now? Any questions on the data or the method that we are going to follow? Okay, so first step, this is of course not specific just to time series forecasting. For any exercise that you do in Python, you would have to load a few libraries which will contain some functions which will enable you to use certain features of Python, or to perform certain operations using Python. Okay, so the first library that we load is what we call as the pandas library. This library is one which you use to perform data set operations, okay, or data frame operations to be more precise. Okay, basically, you can take in data files from CSV or Excel files, and then you can model them as rows and columns, and do aggregations, modeling, and so on and so forth. So that is what this pandas library is used for, and this is the first library that we'll be loading. Okay, and then the next library that we'll be loading is what we call as the NumPy library. So this NumPy library is used to perform certain array type of operations. So what we'll be doing here to make that time series model, that model does not take in a data frame column directly. So for inputting the data into this exponential smoothing model, we need to transform the data set into an array data type. So that array data type is available in the NumPy package. So this is the second package or second library that will be importing. Okay. And then I told you that we'll be doing certain descriptives on the data, right? Plotting the model results, plotting the time series, and so on. So for that, we have a set of functions in this library called as matplotlib.pyplot. Okay, so that is the third library that we'll be importing. And we will be also okay, I think this is not necessary. So I put this statement because initially I was trying to measure the accuracy using this metric called as the mean squared error or the root mean squared error. So for that, if you're so RMSE is one of the widely used metrics to calculate the accuracy of any model. So if you are trying to measure the accuracy of your model using the RMSE metric, then you would have to import these two libraries. So there is a library called scikit-learn. So that has been abbreviated as sklearn. Okay, and from this library you import this metric called as mean squared error. So this will give you a function which you can apply directly. Otherwise, you will have to write a custom function to calculate this mean squared error. If you import this library, you can use it directly and you don't have to define that function step by step. And similarly, for calculating the RMSE is nothing but the square root of this MSE, right? So for calculating the square root, that square root function is present in a library called math. So from that math library, you import this sqrt function or the square root function. Now here, the way I have measured the accuracy is using something called as mean absolute percentage error or MAPE. Okay, so that MAPE function is present in the scikit-learn package. So I will just be importing this scikit-learn package as a whole. So I just say import sklearn, and from this sklearn, I will access this particular function called mean absolute percentage error. Okay. So that's regarding the functions that we use to measure the accuracy of the model. And then we have one more function called statsmodels.api. So that is nothing but I told you we'll be splitting the time series into the different components, right? So the trend component, the seasonal component, and so on. So for that, we need a function called as the seasonal_decompose. Okay, and this function is available in this particular package called as statsmodel.api. Okay, so that is the next thing that we'll be importing. And then the last thing that we'll need is the actual exponential smoothing function, or which we use for the modeling. That is present in this particular library called statsmodel.tsa.api. So this is the same as this one, but I think this is just present in a different part of this particular library. So we specified a separate statement for importing the exponential smoothing function. So just remember, before you get started with any data modeling or predictive modeling project in Python, these are the first essential steps that you need to go through. You need to load whatever libraries that you will be requiring. Any questions until now?
Sai, how will you know which library have which kind of functions?
Just Google it. That's the best way to do it. Because see, there are so many functions and so many libraries, right? So it's not possible for us to remember everything. So best thing to do is Google. Any other questions? Okay, so once you have loaded all the required functions onto your workspace, the first step that you need to follow is the loading of the data set. Okay, I think I just running the rest of
Sai, I had a question.
Yeah.
Like some of these libraries are mathematical and something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are exclusive libraries, or we can get these functions in one or more libraries?
They are usually exclusive. So there are instances where the multiple functions can perform the same operations. They can be available in multiple libraries. So for example, I can't think of an example in Python per se right now, but you have a similar thing in R. So you have this package called dplyr, which you use for data aggregations like sum or average and so on. Okay, and that same aggregation operations can be performed using functions belonging to a different package. But the thing is, the names of the functions will be different. So though the operations performed will be the same, since the functions will be present over different packages, the names of the functions will also be different. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you have loaded all the required libraries, the next step is to load the dataset that you will be working with. So I'm just naming my dataset as df. Okay, and I'm just saying this df dataset is equal to pd.read_csv. Now this is how you use a particular library in your Python code. Okay, so this read_csv function is present in this pandas library. Okay, and for pandas, if you just scroll up a bit here, we have used this alias called pd. Okay, so to access the read_csv function from this pandas library, we say pd.read_csv. We can also say pandas.read_csv, but just because pandas is a bit long to type, we use this alias pd, and we just say pd.read_csv, and then you specify the data files path. So here in my system, I have placed it in this particular location over here, which is D drive perceptive analytics KKSS presentation / blah blah blah. So here I am using this function file called train.csv. Okay, so I just copy pasted this file path over here and specifying the file name at the end, train.csv, and this is an optional parameter. So I'm just saying import only the first 11,856 rows of the data. Okay, this is not something that you have to give necessarily. If you have a requirement like you want to filter out a part of the data, you can use this parameter over here. And just remember, when in Python, before specifying the file path, you have to give this letter R over here as a prefix. R followed by file path within quotation marks. That is the syntax. Okay. And once you have loaded this dataset, now just run this particular line. So to run or execute any command, you just place the cursor or click that particular line anywhere in that particular line, press F9, you will have run that line. So here you can see the proof that your line has executed. Okay, and once this command has been run, you can see that we have obtained that new data set called df. Okay, and this is of a type data frame with 11,086 rows and 3 columns, and it also has column names: id, data, date, time, and count, which is the same as what we saw in this particular Excel file over here: id, date, time, and count. If you want to quickly look at how the data frame looks like, you can just double click over here where it says df. So it has these 3 columns. Okay, and once you have loaded the entire data file, you are just splitting it into training and testing data sets. Now the meaning of this thing is basically from the 0th row to the 10,392nd row, I am putting it as the training data set. Okay, and the remaining rows after the 10,392, that I am calling as the testing data set. Now just observe, I have run these 2 lines here, and you can see in the variable explorer that the train data set has 10,392 rows and the test data set has 1464 rows. Okay. Now one other thing to remember in Python is that I have specified 0 to 10,392, right? But the way Python works, it will not consider the last index that you see that you have specified over here. So it will consider only until 10,391. Okay. So 0 to 10,391 is what it will have. So that basically translates into 10,392 rows, right? So that is what you see here. So if you just open this train file over here, then just scroll to the bottom. See, it has until 10,391, and it starts from 0. So just remember, if you want to, if you want to take just the first 100 rows, okay, so you have to give 0 to 100, okay. So if you give 0 to 99, then that last row will be missed out. So you have to give 0 to 100, then it will take the 100 rows in the data, okay. So you're just splitting the data set into training and testing parts. And then what we do is we aggregate the data set at a daily level, okay. And to do this aggregation, there are two ways to do it. So here we have used this particular function called as resample. Okay, so for the training data set, I'm using this resample function. For the testing data set also, I'm using this resample function. This is one way to do this aggregation, and this is a very short way to do it. The other way to do it is you use the aggregation function available in Python. So it is called as the group by function. You can group by the day each day. So you need to extract the date separately from this timestamp, and you have to group by that date, and then you can perform that aggregation. That is one way to do it, but this is a shorter way to do it. This just needs you to convert that timestamp into date time data type. So the way it has been read in by default, this has been read in as a character data type, okay. Though it looks like a data type, it's actually a character data type in the background, or a text data type. So we need to convert this text into date time format. So for that, we use this function called pd.to_datetime. Now again, this to_datetime function is present in the pandas library. So that is why you say pd.to_datetime. And within the function, what is the parameter it takes? The datetime column present in the train data set. So apply the function to_datetime present in the pandas library on the dataset train in the column date time, and just to help the computer recognize in what format the date time is, we specify the particular format. So date, month, year, followed by hour and minute. So that is what it looks like over here. So date, month and year followed by hour and minute. So that is the format that we have. Okay. So just to avoid any ambiguity, you are specifying the format over here. So I'm converting this. And one other thing is that to use this resample function to perform the aggregation, you need to have your index as the timestamp column. So the timestamp column that we have created here, we just make it into the index. Okay. All right. Now, before I run the next line of code, just observe for a moment. We took 10,392 rows from the data set, right? So that is what we have here. And we know that this data is at an hour level. Okay. Now what we are doing is we are aggregating the hour data into a day level data. For that, we're using this resample function, and I'm applying this resample function on the data set called as train. Okay. So train.resample, and to what level am I taking that sample? I'm taking it at the day level. Okay. So for each day, I will just add the observations or add the values for that particular day. Okay. Now just observe, it has 10,392 rows, right? Now see, if I run this line, it has been aggregated or rolled up into 433 rows. So now if you just open this, so now you see you don't have that hour. I mean, it just specifies 000. Okay. But you have only one row for each day. So 25th August, 26th August, 27th August, and so on. So this has been rolled up into the day level. Now this is just meaningless. But this count is basically what you have here. So let's say 25th of August, if you just add up the values from here, you get you get 76, right? For the 25th of August, total 76 people have that is what you see here for the 25th of August. Okay, so this is how you aggregate the hourly data into a daily data. So same operation you are performing on the test data set also. First step is to convert it into the datetime format and make it as the index column. Now just observe, initially the test data set has 1464 rows at the hour level. Now once I have aggregated it, it has only 61 rows. Just to check it once, you can open this and see. So it has one row for each day, for 1st November, 2nd November, 3rd November, and so on. Okay, so the train data set basically has data until the October, end of October. So if you just scroll down over here, it has data until it has data until 31st October 2013. Okay, and the test data set starts from 1st November 2013 and goes on until 31st December 2013. Okay. So the final 2 months we are taking as the test data, and we have aggregated everything at the day level. Okay. And just to see how this time series basically looks like, I am using these two lines over here. Train dataset name, dot variable name, and the plot function. Okay, so variable is nothing but the column name, or the count column is the number of people who have traveled in the metro. So this is the column name that I'm specifying over here, and I'm applying the plot function. These are certain parameters. So I'm just plotting a figure of 15 pixels by 8 pixels. I'm giving a title saying daily ridership with a font size of 14. So on. Okay, so I'll just run these three lines together. Okay, once you have run these lines, you just see here there is something called as plots, right? So you click here, and then you will obtain the plot that you have executed over here. So the blue line corresponds to the training data until October, end of October, and the orange line corresponds to the training data for November and December. Okay, so any questions here until now? Okay, so this is the initial steps that you perform the data. Now let us get to the second half of the code, which is where you actually get into the time series part of the code. Now, one descriptive step that you follow here is you decompose or split the series into the different structural components. Okay, so for that we use this command. So from the sm.tsa library, we take this function called seasonal underscore decompose. And what is it that we are decomposing in the training data? Because the training data is where we'll be fitting the model, right? So how does this training data look like? Or more precisely, is there any trend or seasonality component in the count variable of the training data? Basically, this column I'm checking whether it has any trend or seasonality. Okay. So let me just run this line over here. And yeah, so if you see, the first box or the first trend line is the actual plot of the data. Okay, actual time series plot. Second box you have the trend component. Third box you have the seasonal component, and the fourth box you have the residual component or the random component. Now this is what I told as the noise, right? Basically, it does not mean that there is any pattern or something. This is just noise in the data, but the data has trend and seasonal components to it. Okay, and if you just refresh your memory to what we were discussing last week, we said the trend is either an increasing trend or a decreasing trend, right? Now clearly you can just see from the raw data itself that the trend is increasing. From 2012 to 2014, we can see a clear over here. Okay, seasonality is nothing but at what level or at what frequency does do the patterns repeat themselves over time. So that also you can see clearly that the data is seasonal in nature. It has certain cycles in it. Okay. Now, once you know that trend and your data has the trend and seasonal and residual components, if you want to use a technique such as an ARIMA, you need to make this data stationary. Now, this particular data is not stationary because it has the trend and seasonal components. Okay, but today we will not be looking into the ARIMA. Maybe we can look at it in a different session. But today we will be using this exponential smoothing method, which automatically accounts for the trend and seasonal components in the data. Okay, so I'm not going to perform that extra step to make the data stationary. Okay, so I will just directly proceed to the modeling phase. So I am just creating a new data set called y_average. Okay, so just go to this variable explorer here, and this new data set is basically nothing but a copy of the test data that we have. Okay, so I'm basically creating a copy of the test data set, and then I am training my exponential smoothing model on the training data set, or more precisely, I'm training my exponential smoothing model on the count variable present in the training data set. Okay, and what is the exponential smoothing model that I'm training? It is the triple exponential smoothing model, or the whole to winter model. So I told you there are three components to it, right? So first is the number of seasonal periods. So at what frequency do the numbers seem to repeat themselves? Now this is something that you can get by observing the data. So in case you feel that the data is having a 7-day cycle, now our frequency of the data is in days, right? So if you feel that your data has repeats itself over 7-day cycles, then you give seasonal periods is equal to 7. Okay. Now on the other hand, let's say you have yearly or monthly, let's say you have monthly sales data, right? Now every year during the month of October, you have the festive season and you feel that the sales repeats. Okay. Now then in that case, your seasonal component will be 12. So every 12 months your that cycle repeats. Okay. So that is what you specify via this first component here, and then you also specify whether your trend and seasonal components are additive or multiplicative. Okay.
Sorry, quick question over here.
Yeah.
So we are specifying it in 7, right? Seasonal periods that indicate 7 days. Am I right?
Right.
Then when we want to specify the same 7 months, then how to do that? Like we are not giving anything saying it's days or months, the period, seasonal period that we're looking for.
Yes. So here it doesn't allow you to specify the unit for the days. Okay. So that is why when you aggregate itself, you aggregate at a day level or a month level, and then you give it accordingly. So for example, you have specified the value of D over here. So you see here at the top, specify D, which indicates that you have aggregated over days. And after doing this aggregation, if you give the value of 7, then it means 7 days. Now, if you have specified M over here in the aggregation, and if you give 12 in the seasonal periods over here, then it means 12 months. Like that.
So it basically takes the data level, accordingly it will assign the seasonal period units.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, and then you specify whether the trend and seasonal components are additive or multiplicative. So what do I mean by that? We saw this picture over here. So additive is nothing but if the amplitude of your data is constant over the time, then it's additive. If that amplitude increases over time, then it is multiplicative. Let me just go back to our plot that we had over here. This particular picture. Yeah. Now, if you see the height of the ups and downs, they are roughly the same, right? Though there is an increasing trend, the height of the peaks and the troughs are roughly the same. They do not increase with time. The size of the ups and downs does not increase. Okay. So we can reasonably conclude that the trend as well as the seasonal components are additive in nature in our data. Okay. So these are the three components that you specify for the triple exponential smoothing model. And then you train this model on the training data in the variable count. Okay, so now I am just and in the copy of the test data that I have created, I am creating an additional column called as cold_winter. Okay, this is the name that I am specifying. And how do I create this column? I am forecasting using the model that I have created in the previous slide. So the fit1 is the model that I have created. And using this fit1 model, I am doing a forecast on the test data. Okay. So that is what I have done. Now just open this y hat dataset, just see how it looks like. See, you have the date time, you have the row ID. This is meaningless, just leave it. The count is nothing but the what do you call it? The default data or the original data that you have, and the Holt underscore winter is the value obtained after forecasting with the Holt winter method. Okay. So this is the original value or the actual value, and this is the predicted value. Okay. So now that you have obtained your predictions, we can just see how the predictions look like. Okay. Now I'm just so same plot functions I'm using. I'm plotting the training data as well as the testing data, and also the predicted data, which I predicted using the Holt winter method. Okay. And let's see what that plot looks like. Yeah. Now it's a bit overlapping, but just see if you can observe that there is this orange line that is the original values, and then on top of that orange line there is this green color line which is the predicted values. Can you see it? Can you observe that difference?
Yes, sir.
It's not very clear. So the green line is basically the prediction, okay, using the Holt winter method. Now you see that this prediction also follows that seasonal pattern, right? Now that you have made your prediction, just see how accurate it is. For that you will be using this MAPE function, or the mean absolute percentage error, which you will be taking from the sklearn library. Okay, and accuracy is nothing but 100% minus the error percentage, right? So I'm just saying 1 minus this MAPE. Okay. And the MAPE I'm calculating between the original values of the count and the predicted Holt winter predicted values. Okay, so just two parameters this MAPE function takes. So I'm running this line, and you can see that the value that I'm getting here is 0.86, which translates to 86% of accuracy. Okay. So this is the final step in the time series forecasting exercise using Python. Okay. So we loaded the data set, we loaded certain libraries, we loaded the data set, we split the data set into training and testing sets, and then we aggregated the hour data into the day data. We did certain basic descriptives on the data. We plotted the different components of the time series. We built the model, we forecast using that model, and then we measured the accuracy of the model. So that is what I had for today.